I'm joined now by mixed media artist Valerie McBride. Valerie, thank you for being here. Your work is so neat, but there's so much of it that I don't even know where to begin. You are truly mixed media because I've seen lots of different styles, but I want to start with your love affair with art. When did that begin?
I would have to say from the moment as far back as I can remember, being in grade school, that was all I ever wanted to do. That was all I ever wanted to spend my spare time doing. I've loved art from day one.
How did it start? Were you a doodler? Did you, was it painting?
I'd say it started because my mother was an artist. She was always doing little things, making little cards or drawing and sketching, a lot of little pictures of me. And I started with watercolor. I enjoyed that, and it kind of took off from there.
Was there a point when you thought, oh, this comes easily to me? Not only do I like it, but maybe I'm better than the other kids my age.
I think in junior high school and high school, everybody thought of me as the artist. That was kind of my thing, and I think I just always enjoyed finding out and learning as many different techniques and genres as I could.
I think that's what I find most interesting about you is all the different genres. So what was sort of the first thing that you really dove headfirst into?
I would say the first thing was watercolor. My mom was it still is, a watercolor painter, and I enjoyed the fluidity of the water in the color. I loved that, and that kind of developed into watercolor and India ink mixed media. Now, back in the day, I used an actual fountain pen type where you dipped the quill into the ink and drew with that.
Wow.
Since then, that's gone into the beauty of a technical pen, which I think even now is being considered an antique.
Wow. Tell me how you learned. Was it through watching your mom? Was it books?
Mainly, I think, through high school. I took every art class that they offered, which I think was more than what we offer today. But I'd go to the library. It was long before the internet, and I would go and I would bring home 20 to 30 books at a time, whatever I could carry, in anything. Books on charcoal, books on painting, oil, watercolor, acrylic, even books on needlepoint and sewing and collage. I tried everything and anything from the books that I would get from the library.
I read that you got into needlepoint
Yes.
and then incorporated it into, was it your watercolor or collage?
I've done paintings that include stitched on material, stitching on beads. I do a lot of trees, and I have some trees that have beadwork on them, as well as maybe small pieces of material or paper that's stitched together.
Tell me how the journey then progressed to where you are now.
Well, I think the thing that most changed the direction that I went in would have been the Artists Guild has meetings every month where they have people come in and do different demonstrations. And they had one on a product that was an acrylic paste, a demonstration I actually missed, but my mother told me about because she attended. And I found out about the product online. I went and picked some up at one of the art stores and started to play with it. And from there on, I was addicted to the acrylic paste.
Is the acrylic paste common? Because I looked at your work and I thought, I have no idea how she does it. I've never seen anything like it. And I thought, what is that? Some of it almost looks like metal.
Yeah, that's probably one of my biggest compliments when people look at some of my pieces is I've had people ask me how I got the metal to do that.
Yes.
And basically it's acrylic paste that's applied, and then I use a metallic, usually kind of rubbed on with my finger or a paintbrush, which creates the metal look.
That is fascinating. So you start with, let's kind of break down the process.
Okay.
You start with, obviously, an idea. You do a lot of landscapes. So do you work from a photo, or do you just, think of what you want this scene to look like?
The majority of what I do, I just do from my head. I did just kind of flows. And there's times that I'll sit down and paint a background or start with a painting, and it'll go a complete different direction from what I started with. That happens a lot. But I also paint from photographs. I do commissions where people have had like a country scene or a vacation photo, and they want a painting. created from that. So I do both.
So you start with regular acrylic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I paint a background with colors to get the feel that I want. And then I will mix paint in with my acrylic paste. And then I'll do the foreground and then the tree work with that.
So the acrylic paste is not colored.
No, it's white.
Okay,
It's
so
white.
then you have to mix, and is it just a single color and then you paint when it's dry, or?
And normally I do a lot of black trees, a lot of dark. So I will mix black in with the product and I'll put it on to the painting. And then I may add different colors to it to give it a more realistic look. Like a black tree may get gray and beige and tan to make it look more 3D.
How has this process evolved for you?
Boy, quite a bit. I started with just, a rough tree, and then I do a lot of the branch work I do with India ink to make it more detailed. And that has progressed into pressing different items into the background to create a pattern in the background with the acrylic. I'll use stencils to create a background and then paint over that. I'm evolving more into mixed media as far as I love to do the 3D artwork that's in a case, like a shadow box, and I've done real well with those here recently.
How long does a piece using the acrylic paste generally take from start to finish?
Well, I paint the backgrounds, and sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 pieces going at once, depending on what I'm working on. And I'll paint the backgrounds first, and that dries, so that's 4 or 5 hours. And then I'll mix the acrylic and apply that, and that may take as much as 2 or 3 days to dry, up to a week, depending on how thick the area is. I recently did a project where I had a staircase, and it was very thick, so that took several days to dry. So once that acrylic paste is dry, then I go back and do the other paint work on it to give the 3D effect or whatever effect I'm looking for. And then after that dries, then I do the fine ink drawing over that. So it generally can take several days to get the basics done.
Do you work all day? Do you, after the original background is dry, are you dying to get back in? And
Often I am, and sometimes that's like I'll have 3 or 4 going at once in different stages. I'll have backgrounds all painted, and then I'll have the acrylic work, the 3D paste on it, and then I'll have pieces that I'm working on detailing at the same time.
how forgiving is the acrylic paste? Do you ever get it on and it's not what you want? And is it malleable? And
Yeah, when you add the paint to it, it can be very loose. So you have to first be careful how much paint you're actually adding. Secondly, I work with a lot where I'm pressing a design into the background of it. So it's all about timing. If you wait too long, it's too dry. If you do it too soon, your template or your stencil will have paste on it. So it's kind of a timing thing that you just have to play with. But mainly I'm just looking to get that tree or that painting to come up off the canvas as far as possible. People are so interested in them. I spray everything with a sealant very heavily when I finish, partly because it's got raw India ink on it, and partly because people want to touch my pieces. And I have a friend that does shows with me, and it drives her crazy that people will come in and touch my paintings, but I'm very used to it because they kind of draw you in to do that. You want to feel that 3D.
yes, you were telling me before we started shooting that you work full-time for the city.
I do.
But you are an artist there. Tell me just a little bit about that.
Well, I was very blessed in finding this job, and I've been there 30 years now. I'm a design draftsman. I do a lot of the construction drawings for when we do new streets, new roads, or trails. That's been a passion of mine to draw, and to have a job where I could do that for the last 30 years has been a real blessing.
Do you think that has influenced your work outside of career?
I would say definitely, because that's where I was introduced to technical pens. And basically, it's an ink pen that holds India ink. When we started drafting back in the day, we actually drafted on the drafting board on actual paper with these pens, and then an electric eraser to grind off whatever mistake you might have made or changes that the engineer had decided on. So I learned how to use those pens and how to use the lettering guides back then, and absolutely fell in love with it. So I've been using technical pens ever since.
What is next? Are you working on a particular project?
Yes, I'm gathering trash. Basically, I love doing collage work. I love doing detailed pieces that are layered with, especially like clock parts and watch parts. I just completed a piece that is in, thank goodness, got accepted into the show at the Midwest Museum of American Art in Elkhart. And it's in a large
Congratulations.
case, and it's basically a big shadow box. And the piece has a ukulele and a hand that is actual size that my son created for me with a 3D printer that is completely covered with tiny watch parts and junk parts and clock parts. And then there's ink detailing and paint as well, with the acrylic background that's stenciled with clocks and gears. I want to do more of the 3D shadow box work. I
Yes.
just absolutely love it, and so I'm gathering junk.
Well, so am I, but not to make anything beautiful. Thank you for your work at the city, for your work for the city, and thank you for explaining to me this fascinating process. I hope to have you back soon.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Arts in Focus on PBS Fort Wayne is funded in part by the Our Foundation and the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne.